Well, I think your analysis was very straight line. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing funds.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go down that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they were talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got that.
Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Come on, Lou Taylor. That's good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
yes,
but an erratic detective, is Mikhail Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? Look, how you deal with that? You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Kingdom, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. Hi there, you're looking at the Freddie Kissoon Show. Thanks for being with us. Good evening, good night, good morning, wherever you are based in different time zones. We're filming on the balcony of the Everest Cricket Club. As you can see in the background is the Everest Cricket Ground and the youngsters practicing. And beyond that is the mighty Atlantic Ocean. Interestingly enough, this cricket ground was called Indian Sports Club. And tonight our topic racism. As our guests this evening, 2 lawyers and 1 medical doctor, but they would not be discussing the legal world of Guyana, or they will not be discussing medicine. They will be discussing racism, the pronouncement of Guyanese society along racial lines. We're coming up to an election, and one would have liked to think that as we come up to that election, the last thing we would want would be to incite people unnecessarily by invoking who is African, who is Indian, and who you must vote for or who you must cling to based on race. This evening we will be discussing what 2 persons, 2 very eminent African Guyanese have said, and we will ask our panelists to analyze what was said. We start with Professor Clive Thomas. Professor Clive Thomas, as reported in the Starbuck News, said to his party's executive meeting, referring to African Guyanese, when you trade your votes for perks, when you sell your votes for resources, you lose your vote forever. He was, of course, referring to African Guyanese and visiting PPP government teams going to their village. He interpreted that as selling your votes. 1 week after Dr. Clive Thomas said that, David Hines, who was at that same meeting, came out with a devastatingly obnoxious statement that in Guyana, African people must stick with African parties. He said in a country where there is division between Africans and Indians, Africans must stick with their own. And he called African actors, African political activists, and African youths gravitating to the PPP some scatological descriptions as ass liquor, bottom ass liquor, particularly referencing James Bond and Chronicle columnist Leonard Craig, to discuss what it would be like as we lead up to the elections, is 2 iconic names in Guyana, Charandas Prasad and none other than Mr. Datadin himself, Sanjeev Datadin, and the leader of a new and united party, Dr. Mark France. What do they have to say about what Dr. Thomas and Dr. David Hines have to say? Do they fear for Guyana in an election coming up? Are these two men ruminations to be dismissed, or are we in for trouble? How can we stop Thomas and Hines from repeating it? And do Hines and Thomas have any tractions among African Guyanese? So that is our discussion tonight, and we start with Mr. Sanjeev Datadin, National Attorney at Law and PPP representative in Parliament. Sanjeev, thanks for being to this program for the upteen time. Sanjeev, do you have a fear that there's going to be more Clive Thomas and David Hines spouting things that we wish they would not say?
I do, but firstly, let me say good evening to you, or good day, or good morning to your viewers. Freddie, thanks for having me again, and of course, I'm happy to be here. Now, we start at the beginning. You said that these are eminently, or two eminent Guyanese, Clive Thomas and David Hines. I am Guyanese. They are not eminent. They could never, ever represent Guyanese people with that mentality. Now, this is not the first time that David Hines has said things that are so racially motivated. I wonder, I have never met the gentleman, I do not know him. I have seen and I have heard persons say that he's an academic, he's educated. I have never seen anything of him to indicate that. It is disappointing if he is that person. And he, as I am a senior and prominent member of Walter Rodney's party, Rodney couldn't possibly want him in that party. And I say it with all seriousness. You know, during the elections and the fiascos of 2020, while we were waiting for results, I was on a program with him. And I was told that he was this educated gentleman. And he said that what they should do is burn all the ballots. No one should know. It's only because I don't want to curse. And it's only because I didn't want to curse him then that I didn't tell him what I thought of what he said. How could you say, after the people of the country have voted, you don't want to know, destroy everything? Destroy what? To hide, trying to rig the election, to prevent the will of the people, so that you could have your way? Those are not values and principles of Rodney. Now, Dr. Clive Thomas is similarly a member of the WPA. Rodney's party was not built on that. Rodney's party was not about race. It was about fairness and representation. What have they taken his party and done to it? But you see, we have to look at what is happening, and we have to understand. Now, in my little experience that I know, you see what happens. It was about fairness and representation. What have they taken his party and done to it? But you see, we have to look at what is happening, and we have to understand. Now, in my little experience that I know, you see what happens. It's the first time you say something, people are in shock, but then there are no consequences. You push it further, you push it further. And all of a sudden we find ourselves 4 years down the road where he would speak of Afro-Guyanese in such a derogatory way, all because they don't share his view. He hasn't got a hasn't thing.
He hasn't said anything in 4 years that makes sense. And still, when people don't want to blindly follow what he says, he insults them. Well, it's the old adage. When you can't win an argument, then you insult your opponent. But he insults every Afro-Guyanese who wants to join the PPP. What is wrong with joining the PPP? They're a political party. People are free to join them. You would hear another argument and another fight if the PPP were to refuse young Afro-Guyanese from joining. You'd hear an entirely different argument. But that is not the situation. It is inclusive. They want to be, people want to be part of a winners group. They see what is happening. They can judge for themselves. People always back a winner. The West Indies in their heyday, the whole world backed us. Not so much now because we don't win very much. Manchester United, Chelsea, everybody's a Manchester City fan all of a sudden because people gravitate towards those likely to win. But they can judge for themselves. People always back a winner. The West Indies in their heyday, the whole world backed us. Not so much now because we don't win very much. Manchester United, Chelsea, everybody's a Manchester City fan all of a sudden because people gravitate towards those likely to win. But you also have to look at what is going on in Guyana and policies and what is going on and what people are seeing. The system is not perfect. No country could be. But is there more positive? Is there more growth than there is negative? Of course there is. And people want to join the party so that they can participate in the decision-making process, so they can do something. He and all of those like him, because what he does is he stirs it up to incite people about race. First, they participate in the decision-making process so they can do something. He and all of those like him, because what he does is he stirs it up to incite people about race. First, there was the attacks on the parliamentarian, Ms. Chandan, because she said, to be fair about the budget, she couldn't criticize it. He doesn't like that. The people of his ilk, like Rickford
He called him a
Burke,
slave catcher.
like Rickford Burke, they won't do that. They go to these derogatory names because they know it's inflammatory. It will give them 15 minutes of fame, but they don't understand the destruction they do. Both of them sit in the United States. Let them come here. Let them come here and participate in building this country, instead of sitting there with views that are not only old-fashioned, outdated,
Racist,
maniacal, views that no country could survive on by adopting. And the likes of Burke and the likes of this clown sit there and pontificate about what they think. What does he know about governance? What does he know about leadership? He's never done it. He's never come here into Guyana and participated. They all ran. Now they're angry that the people who are here are making decisions that are in their best interest, that are in their family's best interest. But they still want to sit there and dictate. Now, who is the one with the colonial mentality? If we don't agree with you, somehow it's wrong? He cannot, I have never seen a glimmer of intellect from that man. I have never seen him make a point that makes sense. Even when he speaks about West Indies cricket, he's speaking nonsense. He doesn't understand the game. He has this whole thing about, he had a few shows about West Indies cricket. I thought it would be remotely appealing. He doesn't understand the game. He doesn't understand how it's played. But everything in his eyes, he sees as being race. It's unfortunate that it's true. That when you walk around with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And he walks around with this filter over him that he cannot understand. For all his supposed promise, he's produced nothing. For all the leadership prowess, he leads no one. And now, in the later ages of his life, he's angry. The same could possibly be said for Dr. Thomas.
He's in his
80s. All the promise that he had and all the great things he should have achieved. His greatest achievement under the last government was what? Auditing places. Clive Thomas auditing places and looking to file charges and find corruption and dictating what we should do with oil money. Really? That's what you came to? If you told him that, honestly, if you told him that in 1990, he'd slap you. He was better than that. But all of these people who have had their run, had their chance, their impact is nothing. There is hatred because they haven't fulfilled it in places and looking to file charges and find corruption and dictating what we should do with oil money. Really? That's what you came to? If you told him that, honestly, if you told him that in 1990, he'd slap you. He was better than that. But all of these people who have had their run, had their chance, their impact is nothing. There is hatred because they haven't fulfilled what they should have done, and they now want to persuade the youngsters in Guyana to do that. And unfortunately, it's fertile ground. It's easy to convince the unlettered and the uneducated that the reason their life is bad is because of race. Has nothing to do that they wouldn't go to school. Has nothing to do with they wouldn't get up and go to work. It is because of their race. Somebody has got to stop people like them from trying to influence children. Their vile hatred has no place in Guyana. In fact, I don't know where it has a place. It has no place in this country. Not anymore.
Dr. France, your party, ANUG, issued a condemnatory statement on what Dr. Hines said. You want to tell our viewers how you feel as the leader of ANUG about that?
Good evening, everyone. And Freddie, thanks for having me on your show once again. And hi to the two co-panelists on the show this evening. Yes, ANUG is a party that was in our formation. One of the main pillars was for inclusiveness in the Guyanese society, and for us to get past the race relations that we see, especially coming up to election time when it's more evident. Now, both of the major groupings have been accused of having some amounts of racism attached to them, and that's a known fact. However, we would expect that leaders from these political groupings, all of the political groupings, should carry themselves with a certain level of respect, a certain level of class, something that is expected of you, especially by younger persons who may not have known obvious struggles. So, for example, the statement by Dr. Hines, they were not just obscene and vulgar, but it was taking away the rights of the Guyanese individual. We have a right to associate. We have a right to political ideology. We have a right to support whatever groupings it is. And this is a right that is guaranteed by our Constitution. Now, if you choose to deny me that right, or to ostracize me, or to quarrel on me because I have made a decision, a sane decision to support a political grouping, That may not have been traditionally the one that I supported, but it is my right. And you do not have the right to criticize me for such decision and for you to use such lewd words or statements to describe my actions. Now, Dr. Hines has not issued an apology. And this is something, when we speak from ANUG, we try to put forward solutions. So we listed in our condemnation, the press release, a number of solutions in terms of how we can get past this and what we should do. And one of the things that we're doing, and we actually wrote, is to the ERC, because we've seen both political groupings speaking about inclusive governance, looking at various agencies and their functioning, ensuring that we have better governance. So one of those is the Ethnic Relations Commission that is supposed to look at the behavior of Guyanese and Guyanese individuals with regard to how they comport themselves. More a number of solutions in terms of how we can get past this and what we should do. And one of the things that we're doing, and we actually wrote, is to the ERC, because we've seen both political groupings speaking about inclusive governance, looking at various agencies and their functioning, ensuring that we have better governance. So one of those is the Ethnic Relations Commission that is supposed to look at the behavior of Guyanese and Guyanese individuals with regard to how they comport themselves, more so persons in the political limelight. Now, Dr. Hines is not only a co-leader of a political party, but he is also one of the main negotiators for that party to be possibly included in an upcoming coalition. Now, by virtue of you having direct relations with the WPA and Dr. Hines in particular, it brings into question the moral compass of these other groupings. And so in our statement, we said that we believe, and ANUG has always been a forgiving party, and maybe that is why we are where we are today, that people can change, people can repent, and people can do better. And Dr.